Kids don't care about really what you buy them. They care about when you show them. The things that they remember is when you showed up to that game, when you held them down when they had to study for that test. Like those kinds of moments.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning! This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening in or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. I was asked the other day, speaking of victory walk, what was my New Year's resolutions? I don't make resolutions because I believe that every day starts a new step towards whatever my goals, whatever it is that I'm the journey to achieve. I am, so I don't have revolutions, but I do have things that I'm working on, like, and it's a difference. And what's the difference? I don't need to wait for the calendar year to change to start to work towards legacy or to start to work towards setting my family up or to start to work towards all of those things that are necessary for me to be the best version of me. And a lot of times that best version of ourselves, we don't even identify with yet. I'm gonna say that again. Best version of ourselves, we don't identify with yet. Because there's a part of us that is struggling still to answer to the call of our parents and their expectations, answer to the call of our spouses and their expectations, answer to the call of the world and their expectations. Listen, I'm going to keep saying this, answering to the call of our children and their expectations, to where we can't really tap into our true iamic self or our true authentic selves because we have so many layers that we have to peel back on. I went to college for this, so I'm supposed to be this. I went here for there, so I'm supposed to be there, because we live in a world that segments and and kind of build narratives around before we can even get a start on. So if you grow up in New York like I did, in Queens, like I did, in Far Rockaway, which is two different type of narratives, like I did during the crack era, like I did in a violent community, like I did. The narrative is already shaped that this is how you have to be, because you have to represent that you were connected to. And these connections come from grooming that may or may not best fit narratives that who you are purposed to be later on in life. So you have these narratives that's pulling at you, right? Oh, I have to do this because they did this, and this is the way that we respond to violence, and this is the way that we respond to an enemy, and this is the way. So you have all of these things, and then when you find out as you get older that some of those narratives don't fit in society, so you're saying, "Oh, well, I only hit him because he hit me first." Well, yeah, here we don't hit. That's a new narrative, and I don't know how to respond in that culture, that creation, that nature, because that's not my nature. I was taught that if somebody did something to you, somebody violates you, you violate back. So when the adaptation takes place and you're an entrepreneur, you can't live lawlessly or live according to the codes that you were breeded to live in, and it becomes difficult to navigate. And that's when it starts to affect the profits, because people don't want to come to work for someone who's unhinged. People don't want to partner with someone that they can't really trust. So now we want to try to pull back from those narratives that we already had before us without working internally on ourselves in order to build new narratives. And it's okay to have new narratives. And I think that this is where our podcast kind of found its home base is that, yeah, you could have been all of those things and still be something new. You don't have to say, "Oh, I was that," and then now became like, you know, no, this is who I am now. And you get so far away from who you were that the only thing that you know of is who you are now. Right? It won't become a thing where I have to validate one thing in order to supplement another or to up to make something else that I've done feel good. No, this is who I am now. However, I did have a life where I could have been those things, but I'm so far away from thinking like that. I'm so far away from like I address complicated problems with a different type of mind. And
Mhm.
I'm glad today to have on our guest because we told you we evolve people through conversation. We have on our brother Kason. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, boss. Thank you so much for having me and to talk about these important topics with your audience, walking in your victory, the reframing, changing the narrative. These are all very powerful messages that people need to hear for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, reframing narratives may have been the one thing, but what does that look like for you, and how has that helped shape your entrepreneurial experience as you continue to evolve? Because I think the other part that people kind of miss is that we continue to evolve, right? Uh,
100%.
we continue to evolve. So even if this conversation may outdate itself 2 years from now, because you may come back on and be like, "Hey, yo, I know 2 years ago I thought this way, but was I wrong?" Or
Yeah.
let's look at it from here. So how has that evolution been for you?
Yeah. I think overall my positioning is that change is the only constant
Hmm.
and very sort of similar background. Like, I was born and raised in the poorest congressional district in the Bronx. Forest Congressional District in New York City in the mid to late 80s. So, as you sort of articulated, the idea that, you know, you're not supposed to be something different. You fit a cast, you fit a certain expectation. And, I had that impression that actually pushed me forward to say, you know what? I'm gonna defy that expectation and make different choices to elevate myself to where I wanted to be professionally, personally, and otherwise. And that drove me down a very deep corporate path of figuring out like, hey, I'm going to show people what success looks like. I'm going to take the responsibility of my family, of my family's last name on my back and try to drive that. And what it led me to is it led me to some pretty good successes, but it also led me to burnout
Mm,
because I thought that the it was all about the next promotion, more money, more recognition. And then when I hit that wall, that's when everything changed and I rewired and I started to appreciate that, you know, you have to continue to grow, that it's not about the destination of the next bag, the next role. It's about the journey of choosing intentionality in what you do and why you do it. And that's what spawned the whole concept for me entrepreneurially as a coach and this concept that I talk about in my book called the life work revolution, because so many of us chase bags, chase roles, chase business, and they allow that to define us, define who we are. I'm a successful CEO. I'm a VP of this. I'm a VP of that. And it's like, nah, it's about who you are as a person and then how your work serves, like your work is an output of a well-defined, well-structured way of life and way of thinking. And the way you get to that is you do have to change your mindset and you have to continue to evolve based on where you are, because the things that got you to where you are not the things that will keep you there.
how has that evolution been for you? And and because we both grew up in the hip hop era in the '80s, I was a hip hop junkie. I'm gonna ask you some questions that I probably wouldn't say, like, but how has that evolution worked for you? And what were some of the struggles? Like I can articulate some of the struggles that I had to go through as I was
Mhm.
evolving and seeing, okay, I think different. What was that like for you
Yeah,
and how does it serve you now coming from the burnout? Not going all the way back to the 80s, but coming from the burnout where you realize that it's not the things that I obtain that makes me who I am. Because I
yeah.
came from an era where it's like, oh man, you have to have this or you got to have that. And the house is big and the people like, oh man, you seen this. But if I'm empty inside, none of that means anything.
100%. I mean, I think that's what I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that, you know, in my own journey, achieving those goals, I had this expectation that I would feel a certain way. And then when you achieve the goal, it was like it felt hollow. It didn't quite feel right. And then what that allowed me to do is when I went through the burnout and I rewired, I started thinking about what were the things that really mattered to me. Time with my family, enjoying the precious moments with my children, not spending 60, 70 hours a week working. And it's like, great, I get a bonus, but so what? It's like the shift for me was I started looking at those accomplishments and those achievements, not as the goals and of themselves. I started looking at them as leverage.
Mm,
Like these things are utilities that will help me pour time, energy, and effort into the things that really matter, which raising my four beautiful daughters, being a good partner to my spouse, making sure that I am present and I'm able to share those quality moments with them, taking them to practice, taking them to recitals, those kinds of things. And therefore, it shifted how I started approaching work. So work for me was then how do I master work so that it doesn't take up all my time? How do I start looking at my energy? Like what are the things that energize me in what I do entrepreneurially and also as a corporate executive? What are the things that drain me? So I know how to delegate those things, optimize them, use technologies to supplement them, all so that I'm really stepping into my true purpose. And that's why even the title of my book is like, how do you start to unplug from the system? Because there's a system that we're taught, that we're fed, that is dictated to us, especially when you come from a marginalized background and you come from like metro areas. It's like these are your boxes, these are your lanes. And I learned how to unplug myself from that and find my purpose. But then I started using work, my entrepreneurial work, my executive work as those tools to really unlock my life and thrive in every.
I'm glad that you brought that up. When you talk about your daughters, I have three daughters, or three kids, two sons and a daughter. I'm actually in on the road taking my daughter back to college now. She goes to Howard
Nice.
University, and we're doing that thing together. And for me, I've never upserted my time, but there was a time where I felt like other things were important than the things that I feel like are important now. When we look at the external family portion, can you talk to me about that in a dynamic where if someone see you living in a certain type of environment or doing certain type of things that they feel like they should have a level of access to you that may not dormant that, how are you able to figure that piece out in that dynamic? And everyone listening to this may not understand what I'm talking about, but there's a dynamic where people feel like they're they should have access to you in a certain way that maybe they shouldn't. And how are you able
Yeah.
to unravel even that?
Yeah. I would say that going back to the theme of evolving, right? Like the air changes. The type of people that you connect with at one point in your life, it changes as your goals evolve, as your opportunities evolve. And I'm a big believer that like proximity is power. And then also as you start doing different things, you have to also learn how to protect your peace and protect your time and your access. Because when you have goals, when you have like a purpose, you move toward that purpose and you go to the things and the people and the relationships that start to serve you. So those older relationships, sometimes people feel like, oh, you sold out, or oh, You think you're better than me. What that's really about is that's about their limited view of themselves
Mhm.
and not so much about
Yeah.
me personally. So I didn't personalize those things. The way I kept moving was let me lead by example. And like I'm always the type of person where I will help someone step forward as a coach, as a leader, and help them move forward with their ideas. But I'm not gonna stop my
Right. Yeah.
movement
Yeah.
because someone else feels some kind of way about the things that I'm doing, or they feel like they can't move as fast or as far as me. So I gave myself permission and grace to let go of that responsibility as if I owed someone access to me. And once I was able to do that and it still be helpful, I think that really changed how I started to accelerate the kind of company that I keep around me. And it doesn't mean that you're connected or you're not friendly, but everything has its seasons and relationships have their seasons and people have their seasons in your life. It doesn't mean that they're gone forever, but they may be gone for right now because you're on a different frequency and a different wavelength in what you're trying to do.
When you
And
sat,
it also creates capacity for you to
yeah,
open up for other people.
when you sat down to write the book, and you have all of these experiences, and I never like to like jump into, oh, I don't like saga stories. Oh, and then one day I did this, like, but I like to look at, I like for the audience to capture your framework, right?
Yeah.
Because then they can, I'll tell them to follow you on social media and all that other stuff because they
Mhm.
understand your framework, so they'll learn you and your voice. But when you sat
Yeah.
down to write the book, from that standpoint, from that framework, what was it? And books evolve, but what was the message,
Yeah.
the core message that you felt that you wanted to share with the world, and the outcomes?
Yeah. I think overall the whole premise of it, like life work revolution, like I was very careful about those terms. And the main framework of the book is that right now, the world we live in today, we're going through a revolution right now
Yes.
with AI, with all these different things. And most people think about these things in the context of like history, like in the past, like you're in school and you're reading the Renaissance and you're studying things like it feels abstract. And what I'm trying to tell people is like, no, there are revolutions happening constantly.
Right.
There's an external one that's happening in the world that we're in right now. But the life work revolution is something that you as a person can take ownership of. And I talk about people's transformations, my own transformation and my clients' transformations in the concept of revolutions. So the framework that they get out of the book is really you go through three revolutions where you ultimately unlock freedom for yourself and however you define it. There's that internal revolution where you start to shift your mindset and let go of some of those things that are holding you back. Moving from scarcity to abundance, moving from a limited belief system to a growth belief system. And then there's an external revolution where once you make that shift, you start then thinking about, to the point I made earlier, your capabilities, your skills, the things you're good at as leverage. And it's like, how do you go show up to work differently because you're now thinking about it as leverage? Like I'm not just clocking in and clocking out. I'm using this as a tool to build the freedom and to build the lifestyle that I want. And then the third pillar in the third revolution in the construct is around community. Because once you have unlocked yourself and once you've mastered how you show up, now you can give and you can represent in all the different ways that you want, whether it's for your family, whether it's for your immediate friends, whether it's for like your industry or practice. But the reason you're able to do that is because you've mastered those other two revolutions, that internal and an external. And now you can write your own ticket and give back through your works and leave your legacy in the sense of like legacy is also something I challenge in the way that most people think of legacy of what you leave behind, but it's really about what you make happen right now. And it can be living in your works and in your practices and in the principles that you stand on. And everyone has the capacity to do that for
When we
themselves.
when we talk about the living legacy, and I'm glad that you brought that up at one of your pillars, There's two things that I want to tap into, but the first one is the living legacy. We've watched it when we see how in the art industry, where someone makes a great piece of art and and they or they're a great comedian and they have these things where they're being honored and they get a chance to really sit back, look at their work from the seat of the audience. Why
Right.
is that important? Why? But we don't do that with our grandparents or our
Yeah.
parents, or we wait till the funeral sometimes, or we wait till they're gone and like,
Yep.
oh, grandma left me a policy or granddad was this. But should we take the time to really, as the individuals who've been impacted by that legacy piece, why is that important, and how should we look at it from the person that's been impacted? And then you can also talk about that reverse role of how that reciprocity happens from the person that that has impacted us when we give them that back, because sometimes they don't even
Yep.
realize, because they may just do it, just that's who I
Yep.
am. They don't know that they're impacting us this way or they're that way. Why is that important?
I mean, I think it's really about like well lived life and intentionality. Like to what you said, you know, artists and others, they create their works and they're celebrated because people get some energy out of it. They get something out of it. And in most people's lives, it's kind of like you don't recognize people or you don't give them their flowers until they're gone.
Yeah,
That's not the point to appreciate them. It's like when you have a sense of presence and awareness, every day is a celebration. Every day is an appreciation. And so to your point, when you talk about the reciprocity and also like just the living legacy is like I think each individual has responsibility to show gratitude and appreciation for those who impact their lives. And it can be in the smallest way. As a parent, you do that with your kids. Like when you think about it, your kids don't care about really what you buy them. They care about when you show the things that they remember is when you showed up to that game, when you held them down when they had to study for that test, like those kinds of moments. And when you talk about like reciprocity, I'll even open up, a more personal story for you. My grandmother, 94 years old, just passed away about 6 weeks ago,
sorry.
and to that point, I'm one of her 14 grandkids, 27 great grandkids, 17 great great grandkids. And when you think about when I think about the life that she lived, she was a published poet. She was the church mother for her church that she went to in Harlem. She had so many indirect children because she fed people all the time. And she was just always that pillar in her community. And as a result of that, she impacted so many, many, many people. But she was able to see that and appreciate her legacy through all of her grandchildren, all of her great grandchildren, and the way that we would show up for her. And just that impact, what it helped me realize is that, and not only that, she also traveled a lot. Like she went to see the world and she set that example for me, and I didn't even know it. Like a lot of the things that I push for and like making sure I expose my children, making sure that I continue to evolve, she set that precedent. And I really didn't realize and appreciate it as much until I had to start dealing with her passing. And it forced me to reflect on her impact. And even for all the times that I was thankful and I was appreciative and I did all the small things, it made me really realize how much she influenced me along the way. So like these are the kinds of things that really, really matter.
Yeah, they do matter. And me, I started preaching when I was 24 years old, done a lot of funerals. And I've had to stand up and say so many times, not heartlessly, now is not the time, because sometimes the funeral be on a time
Mhm.
constraint. The family got to go bury, and it's a lot happening. Now is not the time to give this soliloquy, because the person was there and you needed them. But look at what it is, the impact that you just so graciously shared with the world, right? 24 years is a long legacy, bro.
It is.
It's a long legacy. And for someone who, in the context of when they were born, been able to be published and been able to travel and been able to do something shows why, although yeah, I may start here, but there's something inside of me that's pulling me towards something different, right? And you know, you probably was always different than your friends. When you stepped out on that next level to entrepreneurship, to coaching, what was some of the things that you when did you know that this was the time for me? This is the time that I need to share my insight, my values, and I'm confident that someone will be able to compensate me for it. Because people always talk shit, but they can't everybody can't get
Yeah.
compensated.
100%. I think it was actually around COVID. Like, I've been in the talent or development space for almost 2 decades.
Okay.
And in the nature of my work, what I recognize is that when you have durable, rare, valuable skills, you can leverage them. So I came from the consulting realm, and I've had my ebbs and flows. So I always had that kind of like, I can work for someone, but also recognizing that the value I bring allows me to do it on my own, but I never felt like really comfortable. I even tried my own consulting practices early on, and it was a little I was a little more immature in
Mm,
my career at that point. But what happened around COVID was like I said, when I talked about like burnout and my like sort of like evolving and the unlocks around how I approached work. When COVID happened, the world was standing on its head.
yeah.
People, the thing that happened for most people was that like, you know, their fancy titles, their job security, all that stuff, those ivory towers all fell down. Everything. I knew executives, VPs, all these people. And now they had to go back into the world where people were trying to figure out what's next.
Mm.
And I started helping people just out of the kindness of my practices. I extracted them and I was like, hey, here are the patterns. Like, the people on my teams do really well. These are the things that I do when I'm looking at opportunities, when I'm looking at projects, when I'm thinking about where I want to invest my energy. And then that's when the light bulb went off. And I was like, look, I can do this. I do this while I work, because they're not mutually exclusive things. And not only that, it's like I do it because I feel like it's the right thing to do. Like that unlock is so important.
I don't want to cross cut you, but that was the second
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to piggyback on because you said something that's important. I always show I really target people that's looking to be entrepreneurs. And we
Mhm.
have a high male demographic between 35 and 48 years old. Um, and now I'm noticing that we're starting to tear down into that 28-year-old level. However, what I want to get the message across, and it's something that you said that is very important, is that how you leverage even being better on the job that you are so that you can upscale there because you may not be an entrepreneur. So I'm like, all right,
Mhm.
maybe I can tweak the message too and talk about scaling up in the workforce. And that's something that you said that you talk about in your book. And you just pointed it out again. And that's the only reason why I stopped you in your answer, because
Yeah.
I think that's an important framework for a conversation.
No, 100%. I'll even double click on that some more. It's like, here's the thing. Entrepreneurship is a skill.
Yeah.
It's like, not everybody's meant to be a business owner like outside. But when I literally in my executive roles, my title is like head of future work.
Right.
And I talk to these executives and I'm talking about what are the needs for the talent of the future. And what they're in essence, what they're looking for is they're looking for people who have an entrepreneurial mindset and can move like an entrepreneur inside the organization. So these skills have leverage whether you choose to step out on your own or if you're trying to navigate the work of tomorrow within these organizations. So it's very good point and a very good call out that this is applicable no matter what path you take. And I encourage any professional, agnostic of demographic or age, that you have to diversify. Period. Like, use your
Yes.
work as a tool, build those high value skills, monetize those skills, so that way you are hedged and you're giving value to your employer, but you're giving value more importantly to yourself. And you're opening up new doors and new windows and new opportunities based on those skills, that knowledge, those experiences. And when you start to think about your work in that way, it it's why you show up. You start to show up a little bit differently. So now you look at, like, instead of seeing work as a problem, you just look at, I see opportunities. I see challenges that are going to build me. It's not about whether I'm successful or I fail. It's about that. It's about the story. And that's how you start to tap into your brand, because most people buy into your brand through your stories.
When I managed, I would work with the janitor. I'll have on my suit, pull up the sleeves. It's Christmas. Everybody's leaving. And
Hmm.
I'm like, yo, come on, let's bust this out. But I got a sense of how long it take to clean the building. It's my thing, right?
100%.
Here it is, the boss. We may pop a few afterwards, you know what I mean? But he's seeing that I'm not here and they're there. But what he also doesn't understand is now I know how long it takes. So if he's out and I know the building. I know he's showing me no, because this person leaves their garbage here. They know the run of the mill. That's a skill that sometimes we undervalue, but it's crucial to the cog in the wheel. And I think that a lot of times when we are looking at from an entrepreneurial space, we forget about those cogs that make the wheels, the spokes run. And we watch
Yep.
when people start letting go people. They let go Lucille, that you don't know Lucille is really the one who's typing up the thing. Well, we got to cut salary. Well, let's cut Lucille's salary. Now the executive work is not as good as it used to be because our support is not there like it was. I think that what your book does, is it help expose both ends of the wheel, that not just the spokes and the inner tube and the outer tube, but the nuts and the bolts of it. Was that what you were looking for and aiming for when you started to write?
I would say that what I was ultimately aiming for is giving people confidence and a sense that they have agency in whatever they do.
Dude,
That you own your craft. And so, to even to your point, like, there's so many skills that no matter what work you do, that they're transferable and they're applicable in different ways. And when you start to look at yourself beyond, like, this is what I do, now it becomes a little bit different, because now you can say, hey, to your point about the janitor, right? Maybe his ability to organize and his ability to structure and understand these things. These are the kinds of things that would get him maybe into project management.
yes.
But they wouldn't think that way. So the whole point is that, like, I'm trying to give people permission to bet on themselves and to understand that they have a lot of skills they already need to step into that next thing. All you need is a little bit of guidance, a little bit of support, a little bit of a reframe and thinking about yourself differently. Like, your brand is you. Like, you are the company of one, and the different experiences you get help you sharpen your sword.
We grew up in similar backgrounds, and I want to access, and I don't want to. I didn't want this to be a lead in, and I didn't want this to be the
Mhm.
crux of our conversation. But one of the things that I had to safeguard against, I'll be 50 years old this year. I accrued a certain amount of success when I in my 30s, but I still had a mindset that I thought that I grew past from, where I grew up in a place where success breeded external pleasures, right? Whether it's the car or the house or whatever it is that came along with that. We don't have to to chip away at that. And when you get there, you're like, well, that's all we really thought about. We want to have money so we can have these things, these creature comforts. And when we were watching the tear down of some of the people that perpetuated those conversations, how are you navigating through those conversations? How does this time frame make you feel right now? And you can dance away through that halfway as much.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is like where are your priorities? Like what are you sold? Like what dream are you sold?
Mm,
In the sense, like you said, the acquisition of things was like, hey, this is the dream. I gotta look a certain way. I gotta have certain gear. I gotta be around certain people. I have to be seen. When you think about what it makes me think about is it makes me think about what is true wealth. True wealth is not about the material acquisition. When you think about it, the wealthiest people are the people that are unknown, in the sense that they don't have to show it, flash it. They're real meek about it. You know, the circles I'm in today, when you can talk to multimillionaires and they look like they shop at Walmart because that's not their priority. Their priority is not to let you know that they have the wealth. They're using that wealth in ways that serve them. And so when I think about like what's perpetuated in our communities, it's like, you know, you're kind of at the bottom. And in order to feel good about yourself, you gotta get these things to make you feel good. And and as you said, like I relate to your example where you're talking about like at a certain point in your career, once you hit those things, you were like, yo, this is not it. Like this didn't give me the satisfaction that I thought that
no,
that it
and
would. So when I look
and they
at
actually
when I look
they sabotage you too. Sorry, but they do sabotage you. So go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And so when I look at like the people that are out here today that are kind of getting torn down, that you might have idolized like coming up, some people I kind of feel like, well, when I look at them, I'm like, how did they help others? How do they really like use their position and their influence to help others?
Yeah,
You don't really see too much because they're just all about like show me, and then I'm out here and look at me. Like all they want is your attention, and they're selling you that dream. And then you look at a subset of other people who are like investing, and they're giving their works and they're building schools and they're doing these things like they're taking their influence, or they took their influence and they created massive leverage in the ways that other people outside of our communities do. And that those are the people that I admire and respect and still continue to follow and support because I see them as like not only were you an artist or representing the culture, but now you're representing the culture in a different way.
yeah,
Like you're the business,
yeah,
and you're showing you're setting pace for others to think about this that way, and let alone from like a hip hop lens and that kind of thing. So even those artists are now like you look at how entrepreneurial so many artists are now
yeah.
these days.
Because there has to
And
be an
that's a good
evolution, right? Where you go
Mhm.
from in front of the camera to behind the camera and understand that, well, hey, man, I was in front of the camera and everybody knew me, but I wasn't getting as much as the guy in the back that was doing
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
like you said, so
yeah.
man, I really appreciate you taking the time out with me on this Friday night and really diving into what it is that you do. All of Kason's information is in our link. He has his own landing page, as do all of our guests on our walkinvictory.me page, website. But not only that, follow him on Instagram, social media, and all of those things so that you can get portion of what it is that he is teaching and transparent. But I need you to get the book. This book is something that our youth and young adults need to read as a piece of their case history from a young man
Yep,
that made it from one of the toughest parts of the Bronx, that has poured out his history, but also poured out his knowledge that's going to help. And it resonates with us. it resonates with the story, go and get that book today. But all of that, those links are in the bio. All of those links is on the website. And I don't know, he's coaching now. So if you need clarity
Yeah.
calls, if you want to bring them into your schools, New York Stand Up, you want to bring them to the schools and talk to the youth and young adults about his journey and all of those things. Those things are important, that we see figures and images that look like us, that can resonate with the story, that sound like us. So let's do that today, right now. But we don't walk with excuses. We don't walk, um, I don't I don't get into those stories. Oh, I did this and that. We don't walk with like that. The past is the past. I don't walk looking behind me. I'm present. I'm present with my guest. I'm respecting their stories. I'm highlighting the things that they've been through. But I'm also present with you, because my goal is to get you to walk in victory. So Kason is now a part of our Walk in Victory family. And I need you to hit like and subscribe. We don't ask you for cash apps. We don't ask you for Venmos. We don't ask you for the like, and I'm not knocking anybody that does that. We don't do that. We leave value because we want you to walk away with tangible goods that you can start using and applying today to make your life change. And enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.